James Dawson, welcome to Suit Up the Podcast.
It's an honor to be on here. This has been you're one of my go-to podcasts every Monday morning. So to
Thank
be able
you.
to throw the suit on and join you is honestly it's a great experience to be here.
I'm also admiring, you have either a full Windsor or a half Windsor knot, am I right?
Yeah, went full Windsor this morning.
Yes. Every now and again I'm like, because the four in the hand knot is the usual one a lot of people go with. But I'm a half Windsor guy, so I always admire when I see someone go full or half Windsor, very Harvey Specter vibes, and you look magnificent.
Thank you. Yeah, I play with tie knots all the time, and whenever I wear a tie, it's just kind of whatever I'm feeling. I go with. I bartended back in my 20s, and one of the places I bartended at, you had to wear ties, and sometimes I would just find thrift store ties because they're getting trashed behind the bar, and there'd be thick wool ties with these knots that just like take up my whole neck, and they would be like this short, but it was fun.
Okay, so I have to ask, since you opened that particular can of worms or jar of olives, as it were, did you have a go-to favorite cocktail to make? What was your signature cocktail?
Okay, I'm gonna preface this quickly. I could never bartend in today's age of craft cocktail making. I don't have the patience for it. I was your power speed banquet bartender. Like, you have open bar, 150 guest wedding. You want me behind the bar because I'm your drinks are gonna be strong, they're gonna be made fast, and you're gonna get through that line. But that said, I worked at several restaurants, and we had a very nice, elaborate cocktail menu. But I made a key lime pie martini back in the day with a graham cracker crust that was
Oh,
sensational. I must say that was the best cocktail I ever created on my own, and it went so viral back then. It wasn't viral back then, but it got so well known with the regulars there that it was its own private menu for those that knew it. And people would be servers would come up like, "Hey, they had this drink with you last time, and we got it. What do you know what it is?" I'm like, "It's key lime pie martini. Here's how you got to ring it in." And yeah, so that was the best one I came up with.
I will DM you later for that recipe because I have a feeling that if I made that for my wife, she would be so excited.
Yeah, I'll have to kind of rack my brain about what was in it again. But yeah, there were some kind of specialty mixers that kind of were associated with that bar and some of the hardware that we had used for frozen drinks and stuff. But yeah, it's I
Oh,
can get it pretty close.
cool. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I genuinely love it. I think that that's one of the fun things about creativity of any kind is that you get to mix and throw in a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that is my wonderful transition to talking about They Took It Inland by James Dawson,
Yeah.
a crime thriller. Thank you so
Uh,
much for sending me this arc. It is a beautifully well done book. Tell me, how did They Take It Inland come to be? Because it has a lot of great things going on in it.
Thank you. You were the first person that outside of my immediate orbit that read it, and I didn't realize how terrifying that was until you told me you were on chapter like 47 or whatever it was, and I was like, oh, it's really happening. It's really being read by somebody outside of my circle that is going to critique it. But it was. I appreciate you asking for a copy and reading it and taking the time. They took it started with a scene that didn't even make the book.
Oh,
As
that's so
yeah,
cool.
I'm not the plotter. I am the pantser for sure. I just kind of think of something and start writing. So I had this scene where a guy was showing up to what ended up being True Capital. He was
Mhm.
kind of down on his luck, sloppy car, thinking about his life, and it wasn't going well. Goes into the building, just a loner, and puts this USB hard drive in his mouth and pulls the trigger. And as I learned, that's not a great way to start a book. You don't want to start on that kind of downward trajectory. But that yeah, I wrote the first draft of that. That's how the book started. It was a prologue essentially,
Mhm.
and then we met the detective who had a different name, and it was the first draft was 88,000 words,
Wow.
and
How
then
many
and
did
then
it
it went
clock
on
in
the
at by this point?
it went on the Oprah diet as of all the all the editions. It went down. It went from 88 to 91.
Hmm.
And then I joined a writer's critique group led by David Putnam, who's a great crime thriller author, kind of pretty local to me, and talked to him. He was like, "You got to get this down to the 70s. This
Hmm.
is your debut crime thriller author. You don't have the weight behind you. You don't have the reputation to. You need to get this down." So I cut it all the way down to 72,000,
Hmm.
And then it finally came home a little around 78, little over 78,000. So
Hmm.
and I'm pretty I like where it ended up. I think it's a good.
This is perfect book length.
Yeah, thank you.
Huge kudos to you because I think that this is honestly something a lot of debut authors struggle with. When I review books for new debut authors, sometimes I sit there and go, there's so much here that could be cut, so much that's just inflating a story. But you did a great job of having it. This is the story. It does not have the extraneous stuff that you don't want to read in a crime thriller. You kept it to the point. This is fantastic. I love that you have two spines of action really going with the story. You have the stuff going with True Capital and the family, and then you have the stuff going on with, I'll make sure I read his name right, Zane Bruce, which I have to ask. Zane Bruce, where did that name come from? Because it is not a common name.
Yeah, well, the original name was Brandon Davis, which can't get more generic than that. And you're just when you're writing, I'm sure you know this. Sometimes you don't waste the bandwidth or getting stuck on a story, and you're just
Hmm.
like cranked out. Here are these two names that came together, and then as the story evolved, and I was really focusing on the father and sons aspect of between Zane
Hmm.
Bruce and his father, and then
Hmm.
the Truman family. I started thinking about my own family, and my dad was a big Zane Grey reader as a kid.
Hmm.
So that's how Zane came into play out. And then Bruce is a middle name. It's kind of ran through my family. It's not my middle name, but it's out there. So I just kind of like the combination of Zane Bruce. It felt like a
Yeah.
nice, strong, clean
Hmm.
protagonist name.
It is a nice, strong, clean protagonist name. It has that kind of. You told me that Zane Bruce is a character from Black Mask in the 1930s. I would have believed you in the same way that if you told me he was a character in a Tom Clancy thriller today, I would 100% believe you because it's just that kind of always evergreen, good, strong protagonist name.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and now I don't know if it's one of those things where it just comes in the zeitgeist. Now I'm starting to see the name Zane everywhere. I'm like, oh, it's back. Come on. I thought I was kind of being somewhat original and having a nice poll of something that meant something. And now there's like three kids I know named Zane now, and like, a couple authors and at least one author in the Discord has I think a character named Zane. And I'm like, oh man, it's everywhere.
I mean, that's the thing that happens is you start getting the millennial parents, and then you get all sorts of variants and names that you're like, oh, that does sound like something from the 1930s.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And those names are certainly coming back. I know there's like an Imogene now. There's
Yes.
all kinds of names. Our daughter's names are Cora and Joe, and
Hmm.
another one Sophia. Sophia's a pretty popular name, but and then my one of our niece, my goddaughter, her name is Eloise, and so these
Hmm.
names are all coming back.
I don't think Ethel is going to make a return, but I will say I kind of hope that Eleanor has a resurgence. For when I choose names, I really like to go to like Saxon history, which
Yeah,
means I have to avoid the ones that sound too guttural. But there are some of those Saxon Norman names from the era that I'm like, ooh, Henri just has such a ring to it.
absolutely.
When did you start They Took It Inland?
3 years ago, more or less. What year are we in now? 26? Yeah. I'll
Okay,
say I finished
you
it and I finished the first draft 3 years ago, I believe.
okay, that's a
Looking at,
really
I get one of the memories.
fair.
Yeah, that's looking at like one of the memories popped up, as it does on your camera, your phone, and whatnot.
Hmm.
And it said 3 years ago, when I finished the draft, they printed out glass of whiskey on top of it, and that's the picture. And it was the first draft of that. It was just called The Verge back then, named after the
Hmm.
property where it kind of
Hmm.
kicks off the investigation, and it had a deeper play at that time. But again, stuff needs to be cut to sharpen up the whole story,
Hmm.
and so that changed.
Do you remember what type of whiskey it was in that glass? Genuinely curious here.
That was Taylor, CE Taylor bourbon.
Okay. Ooh, I'm not familiar with that one.
It was kind of more. It was almost like a rare bourbon not too long ago, but now it's pretty commonplace. If you got a
Okay.
Bevmore or Total Wine near you, they'll keep it. It pops up at Costco every once in a while. Yeah, Colonel CE Taylor, I believe it is. My dad found it and he bought a
Ooh.
few bottles and gave it to me. Yeah,
People should not sleep on Costco liquor because that's where I found. I was telling you before we click record, I found a 16-year Glenfiddich that was at Costco, and I literally just slipped it in the cart and told my wife, she was grabbing vegetables because that's what she goes to Costco for. I go there for the scotch. And I put it in the cart and
Yeah,
she looks over, she's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "It's the whiskey you're buying
yeah,
me."
yeah, that happens.
Complete
Sometimes things just go in
innocence.
the cart.
So, I again, this came up because behind you, I saw this beautiful bottle of a 19-year Glenfiddich. Do you mind telling me the story for the listeners?
Sure, yeah. So they took it inland. Publication date is March 31st, which is just right around the
Hmm.
corner. And my wife got me this lovely bottle of Glenfiddich 19 on Valentine's Day as a
Oh.
publication gift. So it'll be cracked open on pub day, probably pub evening, and it
Hmm.
will be enjoyed as a nice celebration of bringing they took it inland home. So
Hmm.
yeah, I was excited to crack that open. It's been close. I've been wanting to kind of crack into it, but you know what? I got a Glenfiddich 12 downstairs. It's not too bad,
Hmm.
and a couple others that are able to fill the void until
Hmm. It's something worth celebrating. I feel like completing any kind of creative endeavor feels like you have accomplished something like running a long race or lifting a huge weight, like physical activities. We really easily go, oh, well, they finished, crossed that finish line, they ran the race. We need to celebrate more things like getting a book done because it is a huge endeavor. So, again, congratulations and hats off to you.
then. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a, quote up on my board here that I took. I read the book Relentless by Tim Grover,
Yes,
and
fantastic book.
one of the quotes I wrote down. Lots of people start things, few ever finish things. So
Hmm.
this was is kind of a it sits above the office computer here. My wife likes it as well. She just started a doctorate program, and so
Hmm.
she looks at that. And yep, we're finishing things. And Achievement Day, as I like to call it, for
Hmm.
is also publication day. Everybody gets a birthday, but achieving something in your life that you set out a goal to do, I think is gets more important as we age, I believe.
Hmm. I believe so. There are three heroic plot lines. There is the overcoming a monster, there's the quest, and there's the voyage and the return. I believe that every person should try to do at least one of those every year. Just as
Yeah.
a part of it keeps you interesting, it keeps you vibrant. Hercules slew a monster a year for 12 years. I think that we can try to do something similar-ish. So it could be a trip, it could be accomplishing some big, hairy, audacious goal. But I think that having those things in our lives keeps us fresh and interesting and invested in life.
I love that. That is fantastic. Yeah, and I try to lead. We lead a busy life here at the Dawson household.
Yes, you do.
We're both working professionals. We have four kids. This afternoon, just a few hours, we'll be wheels up to Las Vegas for a volleyball tournament. So I'll be
Awesome.
watching 100 hours of volleyball all weekend long. It's our oldest daughter does that, so it's busy and we're always on the go, and so there's no real time to not be invested
Hmm.
and intentional in what you do in your life. So for us, we are very, this is what we're doing today. This is what's
Hmm.
happening. I have to, the coffee pot starts brewing at 4:30, so that my alarm goes off at 5. I'm at the keyboard writing before I got to get the kids up at 6:30 to do breakfast
Hmm.
and do all that kind of stuff. So that's, kind of my morning routine is early, and uh, whatever I get for writing. It's some days are awesome, and you know
Hmm.
how it goes. The words are flowing. It's like time travel. All of a sudden, that
Hmm.
hour, whatever you got dedicated to it, just vanished, and you're just like, "Whoa, where did that go?" Like it goes from starting out so slow, you're like, "Oh, nothing's coming," to
Hmm.
all of a sudden, reality washes away, and you're in the new reality, which is these characters and this story, and time just I don't even know what happens to it, and then all of a sudden you look up, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I got to stop." And some days, you get four sentences in and it's been an hour and you're like, well, that's it for today, folks. And I got to go. But there was a couple of scenes and they took it inland that I remember writing that I had. And this is what part of the things I love about writing. I had this
Hmm.
concept of like, oh, this is how this chapter is going to go.
Yes.
And then you start writing it. And then the characters start interacting and totally take over the whole thing.
Hmm.
And then the chapter ends. And I was like, kind of floored and shocked. And I went, you know what? It's not going to get any better than that. Still, and I had like 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes to go before I actually need to start to make, you know what? I'm
Hmm.
calling it today. And just closed the laptop, grabbed my coffee and just sat there and relaxed and just said, all right, that was a good one. But yeah,
Hmm.
that's
It,
part of the writing journey.
there's nothing like it when the characters start taking over the story and just bring life to it. in a way that you don't expect because it's that moment that they start taking on lives of their own. My wife just finished writing a story for Men's Venture Fiction May. She wrote a story to
Nice.
submit, and it was fascinating because I don't watch other people do the process that much. I mean, when you're a
Hmm.
writer, it's you, and then you have people like commenting back and forth at you. Watching someone else go through that process in real time as their characters start to take on life in the story was really cool because I think that it
Yeah.
is just so fascinating to see how this person, where they're just a name, all of a sudden takes on a personality that is not
Hmm.
just what you intended for them. And I'm sometimes like, is this how parents feel? I'm not a parent yet. You can tell me. When all of a sudden that kid that you have, they're like, oh, this is who they are. Suddenly do something outside of that. And you're like, wait, where did that come from?
Yeah. One of the main similarities in parenting and writing is that I'm making it up on the fly. It's the stuff that has to come out of my mouth to these kids at times. It's like, man, that was, you never could have scripted that one. And it's just kind of, that's kind of the beauty of it. You hope you're doing the right thing, and you do your best and you show up every day for them. But yeah,
Hmm.
you show up to the page, you write it, you do your best. But yeah, great to hear that Faith put in for Men's Venture Faith. I also submitted this morning. So
Yes.
uh, yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. It was on the list. The days were flying by all of a sudden down the home
Hmm.
stretch, and I was like, last week I was like, oh, I got plenty of time. I'm on the last, chapter and a half. I know how this was want to wrap it up.
Hmm.
I don't. I have no expectations for it whatsoever because I don't know if it's men's adventure fiction enough. Like it's modern
Yeah.
era kind of. It's not.
Ooh, that is interesting
It's
though.
it's not a period piece, but there's cool classic cars, there's
Hmm.
fast chases, there's a
Hmm.
jewel heist. There's I think
Hmm.
that's one of the funnest characters I've ever written because he's one of the most he's very got a very smart tongue and not
Uh-huh.
smart and like brilliant, smart and
Yeah.
like I'm in trouble again. Tongue so he was a lot of fun to write, and I think there's some good spots in there that I think hopefully we'll see what happens to it,
Yeah.
but it's a fun story at least.
Is this the one? I know you had published bits of a Jewel Heist story on your
Yeah.
blog. Is this a continuation and like the full flesh of this?
Yeah, yeah. So I took the idea of the Jade Sunset. Yeah, it was just about a Barbara Hutton necklace being stolen at an auction. So I just kind of instead of that being just its own story, I kind of added a front and added an end
Uh-huh.
to it, and just kind of made it a more elaborate 18,000 word little novella. So
I
that
love it.
was yeah. So that scene is that part of the story is still in there, but now you kind of get the why is he going in there and what happens
Hmm.
afterwards. And yeah, there's a tip at the end, a little tip of the cap. I know you're a fan of the movie Maverick,
Yes, one of
so
the best.
yeah, as am I. And there's also a scene in They Took It Inland. There's a moment that is
Hmm.
also a little tip to Maverick, and I'll tell you about it in a second. But so the ending of this novella I put in, there's definitely a little inspiration from the
Uh-huh.
ending of the movie Maverick that kind of comes into play. That just kind of was I thought it was just fun to write, and made me laugh.
I have to say, I think that end scene in Maverick is probably the thing that I like shoot for in every book.
Yeah.
Not that thing specifically, but I think it's just such a good encapsulation of ending a story with a twist that works and you don't necessarily see coming. And if you do, that it's enjoyable in flavor because it's so much atmosphere of that moment with the characters. And I'm not going to spoil it for the audience if they haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Everyone watch Maverick. The screenplay's by William Goldman. It's peak Mel Gibson, directed by Richard Donner, who is fresh out of the Goonies and the Lethal Weapon movies.
Mhm.
And the score is by Randy Newman. Like, this film should be a cult classic, and I always feel like so few people know about it. So, James, thank you for making me feel like I am not the only one.
No, it's fantastic. It's such a fun movie. With my one of my cousins, we're almost like brothers and more than Southern American cousins. He and I talk about that movie all the time, and we watched it on a, recent bachelor trip a year or so ago for one of our other cousins, and we're just like kind of sitting around the campfire, like let's watch Maverick. Like, yeah, let's get
Yes.
that bad boy on, and we had a lot of fun with that. But yeah, so and They Took It Inland. There's a scene
Hmm.
where Senior's talking to his second man, Russo, and he's kind of telling a story about throwing his loafer at his secretary. And he's like, oh, I
Yes.
want that shoe back. It's a nice loafer. And that's kind of like, that was like, kind of in
Yes.
Maverick, when he's like, yeah, can I get the boot back? It's a nice boot. And just like, that's just kind of my little Maverick tip for insider Easter egg for anybody.
Okay, I have to say, Russo might have become my favorite character in the entire book. He just has great energy to him, and I'm really curious. I don't think that my image of him necessarily matches the actual description, but for whatever reason, every time I heard Russo on screen, I just thought of older Patrick Warburton,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
just,
that's a pretty good one. I also think of, it just popped in my head now, is God, I can't think of his name. He's from Breaking Bad. Mike
oh,
Emmertrout, I think.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that actor.
He also pops in my head.
He was the one that was like, oh, this is who this character is more. And for whatever
Yeah,
reason, every time I'd think it's just Warburton's mustache. Because
yeah,
like
yeah.
now he's
Warburton,
got
that's a
that
good one.
the old man mustache now. And I was like, that's what I keep thinking of. But you do a great job of just peppering the book with these fantastic side characters. There's even the partner character who makes a comment about don't sleep on the Stallone daughters or the Stallone
Yeah,
girls. I was like, that's a really good one. That's just chef's kiss.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. That the side characters. I had a lot of fun writing. Yeah, particularly the detective's partner, Paul Duncan.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, some of the feedback I got from my editor, I ended up just taking and putting into the story. Like she's like, oh, no one's gonna know anything about Miami Vice or Cobra or anything like this. Like no one under that, no one under 30, no one over the age of it or under the age of 40 or 30 or whatever it is. So I just turned that into a line of dialogue, like,
Yeah.
hey, like this crack, unless they cast Glenn Powell, no one's gonna know what the hell you're talking about, like that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And some, that was part of the process I had to really understand about writing is some of the suggestions doesn't mean you have to cut it. Sometimes you just have to call
Hmm.
it out for what it is. And
Yeah.
and there's a part where there's might be a little melodramatic, and then the narrator's like, "Oh, stop being melodramatic. Like just throw it in there. Why not? Why not be a little self aware of what you're doing and see what happens?" But I had to learn a lot writing this book.
Hmm.
I was able to the story was there essentially, but I had to learn about structure, about
Hmm.
point of view. I compare it to the movie Days of Thunder, where
Yes.
Tom Cruise and great Robert Duvall and Tom Cruise like, I could drive the car, but I don't know what the hell you're talking about when you're asking if it's wide on this face or fast on that way or loose here, this and that. I don't know. I could just drive. Like I'm not saying I can just write, but I could tell a
Hmm.
story, understand that. But I had to really understand structure and
Hmm.
yeah, the point of view. I was all over. I was head hopping all over the place and going from
Hmm.
this one to that one. So I had to really tighten that up and I got there as close as I possibly could with this one. When you stare at it for 3 years,
Yes.
you kind of get to a point like I don't want to look at another page of this thing, and we got to bring it home and we got to focus because there are other things I want to write. I
Hmm.
I notoriously started the second book of this before Google up and deleted it out of my
Oh.
possession. This is a lesson on my life because I was writing in Google Docs and
Hmm.
it one day I pulled it up and it wasn't there, along with 23 other documents. It included a eulogy I wrote for my grandmother and
Oh.
stuff that we had saved for our kids and things like that. And they were like, "Oh, you can retrieve it if it's inside 23 days or whatever their random number is." I'm like, it just happens to be day 24, but I was on this document yesterday or within the last week, and they're like, "Sorry, you deleted it." I'm like, "I did not delete this. Like, why would I? Sorry, you delete." I'm like, "I did not delete this, people." So anyway, that was
I
that's a
can
lesson learned, but I think overall
hard.
it's a good.
Yeah, having that. My wife also writes in Google Docs, and every time I see it, I'm like, oh, please stop.
Yeah, yeah. So now I save in multiple areas. A USB drive, and I'll throw it. I'll write in Word. I'll put it in Scrivener. I'll put it in
Hmm.
Google Docs and Proton Drive, and it shall be everywhere in case something like that happens. And lesson learned. Definitely my fault because I did not back up. Like you believe in the cloud until the cloud turns into I don't know, some nebulous being that wants to destroy your world. But it
Until the
was
cloud becomes one of like the end of Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds, or the end
Yeah.
of the Silver Surfer Fantastic Four movie. Just pick any of those films that were like bad guy clouds for
Yeah.
like the early 2000s.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so that was less, but knowing how much this story has changed since that,
Hmm.
those first couple of drafts, a lot has changed. The relationship between Zayn and his father was different. That used to be a
Hmm.
much cleaner relationship where it was
Hmm.
more kind of mentor relationship and more, I'm going to help you out. I had to muddy that relationship up completely just to add more
Hmm.
tension, add more bits. There was no relationship between Zayn and his lieutenant. That didn't. That was just partner, friends. And now,
Hmm.
now it's more romantic. So that needs to be explored in the follow ups. That they were kind of dating, but nothing too crazy like it is, and how it ended. And they took it inland. So I'm okay with it now being deleted, even though there's some. I was 60,000 words into that one, so pretty
Oh.
close to the finish line. I know, brutal, but there's stuff there in that one that would be cut anyway, so it probably
Hmm.
would only. I'm gonna try just so I don't want to you know go into a drinking binge. It's probably only 12,000 usable words.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll taper it down so I don't crack into the Glenfiddich 19 early.
Well, I think that you have a book to be proud of. This is a great read. It is a fantastic thriller. It's a good mystery and it's good crime fiction. And I think that that's part of what I really enjoyed is you did a good job in the same way that I think Elmore Leonard really makes you enjoy the like intricacies of this is the criminal element of it. You gave us criminals that I think have deep psychology. There's real stuff going on with them, and it was very entertaining to see their rise and fall.
Thank you. It's an honor. It's humbling to hear those kind of compliments. And that's certainly the goal. I didn't want it to be a police procedural. So Detective Zane Bruce is our protagonist, and he followed his father into law enforcement, but his father ended up turning his back on the law and becoming an outlaw himself. So kind of that relationship splintered. And as Zane goes down an investigation, it kind of leads back to a real estate empire that came from San Francisco, moved into the Inland Empire, which Inland
Hmm.
Empire is about 60 miles east of Los Angeles, out towards
Hmm.
Palm Springs in the desert. So that's kind of geographical area where this takes place, up against the foothill mountains. It's hot out here. It's 90 something degrees today, and we're in March. So,
I was gonna say, I
and
think
as
that it's like 12 degrees by me, so please
yeah,
just keep talking about how warm it is.
it's miserable. I give me some cold anyway. We're jackets. I don't want to be anyway. We're getting sidetracked. So anyway, so we're in the Inland Empire, and investigation kicks off. And as Zane gets close to the investigation, things get more
Hmm.
personal, and his father comes up back into the picture.
Hmm.
And as that relationship kind of, I wouldn't say it starts being mended, but he gets more of an understanding of what happened to his father and
Hmm.
why he chose his path. But then he also realizes that his dad might even be connected or have some sort of association with the current violence
Hmm.
that's taking place. So as Zane investigates the Truman family, True Capital, senior and junior, because that's how creative I am. I got a senior and a junior.
But I think that you make
uh,
it a really great plot point, honestly, because I think that it does
Thank you.
inform so much of then their interactions.
So that's another father-son story where that son is desperate for his father's approval into the family
Hmm.
business, take over the real estate empire. But his dad just, if you see anybody's seen the show Succession, there's a little bit of
Hmm.
that heavy thumb on his son, always holding it against him, that kind of thing. You're not ready. You're not ready. So Junior starts kind of putting his pieces in place to take over and push his dad out and his old man out, which so he's battling that battle. Zane is over here with his father's son. They're on a kind of collision course, and the cat and mouse ensues until the investigation leads to, um, you know, high intrigue,
High
high,
intrigue.
high intensity. I don't know. You have such a rich, elegant command of the English language, Terrance. I was telling my wife, like, it's gonna be a challenge for me. I'm a Neanderthal with artistic license of four-letter words. I
Mm.
don't like Terrance is such an elegant speaker. It's
I don't know if I would say that because a part of your background, we didn't do a character biography, which is usually how we start the show. We just went right into it. But you have a background, you were a comedian. And like that is working with language. That is crafting how a story is told. So honestly, I'm not surprised that you went from that to spending time writing because I think that it's a pretty natural transition. And to your credit, I'm always curious when someone has background comedy, how funny is the book going to be? And you did a great job of there's humor in it, but it feels organic and natural in the same way that like people bust each other's chops. And you always have those two or three, especially between Zane Bruce and his partner, Paul Duncan. I think I got
Yes.
the name right. There we
Yeah,
go.
nailed it.
They have natural chemistry of bantering back and forth, and it feels like the way that real friends are, which I know is what books are supposed to do, but I don't know about you. When I open a book, sometimes I'm like, especially sibling dynamics. I'm like, this is clearly someone who has not had a sibling before for the way that like characters interact. Or like you read it
Yeah.
and you're like, has this person ever dated someone? Like, this is not how relationships work. Things like that.
Yeah, you do. You also did a great job of that. Speaking of Super it's a one man's treasure.
Oh, thank you.
You're telling a story between two brothers, and you made them sound different and distinct, but also like they're brothers, and they had it's a lot of similarities. So kudos and hats off to
Thank
you.
you.
That was well done. And yeah, the I don't think it was as I'm not going to say it's a funny book, but I certainly wanted there to be some funny elements. Think Lethal Weapon and
Hmm.
those kind of elements when you're doing buddy cop movies and Greg Podolsky's The Recruiter
Yes. Ooh. Chef's kiss
has
book.
this beautiful touch of comedy in it with the high stakes of a thriller, and that was like, I could do a little bit more. I could turn it up just a little bit more in some of the spots and some of the areas, and I think it worked. And some early readers, I have a lot of friends in law enforcement, and some early readers, like one of my buddies absolutely loved it. One of my buddies like, I feel like you're just telling our jokes. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, that's the point. And he's just, so that worked out. And like I said, I didn't get too deep, I think, into police procedural stuff,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to bog down with that. I just kind of wanted to really focus on what's at stake and the
Hmm.
relationships, and kind of see how I could do with that. As I'm there is real life law enforcement, what they have to do,
Hmm.
and then there's the fictional side of it that you know maybe with true crime. But listen, two current cops and one retired cop read early drafts of it, and they're like, "Oh, you're good." And I was like, "Okay, I'll take that." I'm just like, "Yeah, you can clean up." Like one of like, "Oh, you have license plate here, should be the VIN number, change that stuff." Oh,
Hmm.
they did a couple minor tweaks, but and that like, "Yeah, you're fine." I was like, okay, like
That's
that
awesome.
works. Yeah.
And to the credit on the craft of writing, this is incredibly readable, which I'll explain a little bit what I mean by that. I can just open the page and my eyes just can read. I don't feel like I have to it's not taking extra work for me to read the book. And I don't know if you've seen this with some authors where their prose is just so dense that it takes work to get through the book. We had kind of chatted online at one point about how there are some books that we read that it's just hard to like actually get your eyes on the page and
Yeah.
start reading. And that's a tough thing. I think that it took it inland. You do a great job of making this book highly readable. It's highly enjoyable to read. And I can just open up and start reading. So, like, I'm just, everyone listening, if you like good crime fiction, you need to read They Took It Inland by James Dawson. This is a fantastic read. The first chapter just opens right off the get-go. You're in the action, there's things happening, and you can track where everything's going. It's not just noise on the page. And it feels like a good self-contained short story that if you told me you submitted it to Noir November, I would have 100% believed you that this is like your noir short story that then you expanded because I think that's what a good opening should do, where this is the story and this introduces and sets up everything. And I think you set up most of the book in the first chapter, which I think, again, hats off, good job. That is good storytelling.
Thank you very much. And that came after I got it back from the editor.
Hmm.
Two things happened when I got back from the editor. Well, all right, three if you include me trying not to sulk and be like, "Oh my God, what have I done?" That was, and my wife was like, "It's this is what you pay an editor for,"
Yes.
and it wasn't cheap. It was an investment, and it was an education. And I
Hmm.
couldn't have been more thankful for Anita Burns, who did the editing for me. That I found on Reedsy. She was terrific. Worked very well with me. But you know, yeah, there's the whole manuscript that was docked up, and then she gave me a 9 page kind of here's what works, here's what doesn't work,
Oh. Hmm.
and here's broke it down like kind of summary form,
Hmm.
but it's 9 pages because it was 9 pages, and at the end, and I was like, look what she said, and she's like, well, what does the line above it say? You have a great you know
Hmm.
premise and bones, and the story's there, craft is there, but do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, should focus on the good stuff, and then the other stuff you work on. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that's what I'm supposed to do, but you can all get caught up in our stuff. And so I deleted the last 7 chapters and
Oh,
completely rewrote the ending.
wow.
And then I added the first 3 chapters at the beginning.
Hmm.
And because her thing was like, I'm not getting thriller vibes. I'm not getting thriller vibes. You know, where are the thriller vibes? She's not just every other page you're getting this because it's kind of more. We
Hmm.
meet Zane, we meet Lieutenant Carmen Cruz, we meet Paul Duncan, and they're kind of getting the stuff on the investigation, learn about his father. It's like I'm not getting thriller vibes. Not getting thriller. Where's the thriller vibes? Like you're too late. You got to
Hmm.
start sooner. So then I was like, yeah, all right, we do need. And one of the feedbacks I got from one of my police friends was like, I need a story between Zane and Duncan
Hmm.
of kind of them in the action that tells us why they're kind of gives us a little insight to their relationship. That's kind of
Hmm.
them in high pressure situation, how they interact with one another. So yeah, I thought of that opening chase scene, and um, I'm surprised how long it is because a lot of my chapters are fairly short, and the opening
Hmm.
chapter just kick. But I think it's action enough, and I think it
Hmm.
keeps the pages moving. Don't be afraid of the enter key, people. Feel free to hit enter. You don't need paragraphs that go half a page. Hit the enter button. Let's
Hmm.
get things. Let's get some white space on the page, and I think that helps with readability. Helps the eye keep moving,
Hmm.
along with entertaining story.
Hmm. So much of writing thrillers, I say that with, I'm not certain that anything I've technically written qualifies as a thriller per se, but having read many, keeping the pace and keeping that momentum moving through the story is probably one of just the biggest factors of is this a page turner or not. I was recently reading a book that the first chapter is a slog, and I'm like, I don't
Mm,
know. I'm hoping it picks up because if the first chapter is long and I'm bored, not a great sign for the rest of the book, even if it picks
yeah.
up. So again, I think that you did a fantastic job writing those first 3 chapters, releasing. They do a great job of getting you propelled into the story. And the interesting thing I think about this is that usually my reaction is the first chapters need to be cut of any book because usually they're just dead space where we're setting up
Hmm.
characters and there's not a lot going on. I think that you did a great job in having those action beats at the beginning and jumped us into the story. Like again, it really sings, it really works well. I think it's cool that you worked with an editor who helped with that kind of feedback because it's basically like taking a master's course in the writing
Yeah.
process. Because number one thing my wife said after finishing her story from Adventure Fiction May was, I didn't realize how much the structure mattered for how the story is set up. The You have to introduce characters here, you have to have a turn here, you have to have the midpoint, you have to have the all is lost. Like she knew from reading that these are the things, but didn't realize
Yeah.
how much placing them in the story is so important to have a satisfying story.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's that didn't come naturally. I don't think for me. I look at it more like where am I bored? Where like you're writing like what's going on in this story? Who needs to be picked up? And originally when it was bigger, I told the story there are a lot more different characters in there.
Hmm.
Junior was actually 2 different characters. He was Junior
Oh.
and another
Hmm.
character that was down south. I had to I merged them together.
Hmm.
Yeah, the property manager at the Verge. She had a bigger role. She had an assistant that was there, and
Hmm.
there was like a whole, another dynamic. But again, that's filler of 10,000 more words that
Hmm.
needed to be cut and refined. And yeah, that whole thing about structure, that's no joke. And there's a ton. I'm still learning about. I believe you also have the book "Technique of the Selling Writer" by Dwight Swain.
Yes.
That's one that's on the shelf that I kind of punched through. Ryan Pote recommended um, this one. self-editing for the
Oh,
self-editing for fiction writers. Let me see it,
I
the
have
camera there.
not seen that book before. I will have to check that one out.
Yeah, that was a Ryan Pote. He talked about it on another podcast, and then I met him at BoucherCon last down in New Orleans, and so I
Oh,
talked
that's
to
so
him a little bit
cool.
about that. Yeah, I was like, man, I gotta tell you, I bought this book because you talked about it. He's like, oh my, he's like mine because I read it like I go through it before I start like any project, and just kind of he's like mine's covered in notes, and there's little assignments at the end of chapters that to help you kind of understand what they're talking about. But yeah, so I kind of working through these, and again, you could have all the writing books you want,
Hmm.
but until you actually start writing
Yes.
and get feedback from people that have done it,
Hmm.
it's really hard to grasp. I think, or at least for me, once I David Putnam, who I mentioned earlier, he was at my local Barnes and Noble doing a book
Hmm.
signing. No clue. I just walked over on my lunch break just to get out of the office and stroll the bookstore like one does. And he was sitting there, and I started talking to him about what he writes and this and that. And then he gave me his contact information. And probably 6 months later, I was on round three of editing this book, and I
Hmm.
was like, I should probably, if I'm serious about this, I should reach out for some help from a
Hmm.
professional that does this for a living. So I emailed him like, hey, I met you a few months back, read your book, thought it was great. Here's where I am in my writing. You mentioned you have a writer's critique group. What does that cost? What is that? This and that. He goes, oh, it's 100% free.
Hmm.
It's at my house. We're doing it tomorrow at noon, Thursday at noon. If you can make it, we got a spot for you. And I'm like, and it was summertime, so my wife was home with the kids. Everybody's
Hmm.
home from school, and I was like, I could take some time off of work to go down and see what this is about. It's like you don't
Hmm.
have to read, but you 5 to 10 double spaced pages. You read, you can read the table. So I brought pages, and there were seven of us, I think, there, and like all right, one person reads, and then they go around the room, and everybody critiques, and you got to bring copies for
Hmm.
everybody. And after you read, you can't say a word as people critique. No
Hmm.
answering their questions, no chiming in. And then once everybody's done critiquing, then you can go back and go through it. Super terrifying for a first
Yeah.
timer, but I read my pages. They were like, "Oh, I'm proud of you for reading it," and they critiqued me. But no one's coming from like a negative place of
Hmm.
trying to crumble and tear you down. They're just trying
Hmm.
to make your story better, and I understood that right away, and they helped me a lot. And they're, my oh, you're too omniscient in your point of view. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means, so you got to break it down to me like I'm a child. And they helped me understand that. And a couple of them, she was like, oh, if you send me your chapter, I will rewrite it like in a tight third to kind of see if that helps you understand a little bit more. Which I can't believe how generous these people were. And then Dave Putnam met with me privately for coffee, and just bro, he's got a whole system of like the 16 things a story needs, and what chapters should, there's 5 ways to start a chapter. There's only three of them really work, and just like that, he's got the whole thing broken down to a science, really. And he's like 4 books ahead of his publisher, which is incredible, and just
Wow. That's
cranks out.
amazing.
Yeah, he is so prolific and just cranks out work constantly. So it's just the generosity of it. And I can only make it a few times a year, but they're always like, yeah, there's always a spot for you at the table. And again, sometimes, and it's also learned that it's so subjective what people like.
Yes.
I read something brand new
Hmm.
last summer that was like the psychological thriller I'm working on. Again, somewhere 60,000 words seems to be like my stopping point to go work on something else, because this one's also about 60,000 words. And um, it's definitely different than anything I've written so far, but I'm reading it one day, one of the chapters, and the first person that critiqued it was like, it's not really working for me. I really like the thing about the dog, and that's the only thing actually you can say. I really like the thing about the dog. And then I'm like, okay, all right, yeah. And then the next person's like, oh, this isn't really a thriller. It's super atmospheric, blah blah. I'm like, okay. And then the next lady's like, I wouldn't change a thing. This is masterful writing. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, okay. Like there's
Hmm.
everybody has different tastes, because everyone sitting at that
Yes.
table isn't writing thrillers. They're writing memoirs. They're writing contemporaries. They're writing
Yes.
sci-fi. They're writing.
Hmm.
You're getting a whole different. You're getting everyone's got a different genre at that table. So
Hmm.
they like all. Everybody likes different things, and so I kind of like, okay, someone doesn't like the story or the writing, that's fine. But like if there's something structurally wrong, or I've done
Yes.
something, I made a fatal flaw somehow, that's what I grab onto, and that's what I got to focus on when you do these critiques, not just like some of the nitpicky stuff that might be something personal for somebody.
Hmm. Taste is subjective. Like there are so many times when I'll pick up a book, or sometimes when I read stuff for the podcast, it isn't necessarily my vibe. It's
Mhm.
I have a very not specific type of taste, but like you can look at the books on my shelf. There are some types of genres more than other types of genres. I like a lot of crime. I like a lot of noir. I like a lot of mystery stuff. There's a whole lot less of the tactical elements, which is why I don't have any Jack Carr on my shelf. It's not because I
Yeah.
don't think he's a good writer. It's just I'm not, that's not my usual go-to type of book. Thus, everyone has their own taste. I think it's really great how you have really leaned into building your network because frequently what tends to happen, especially debut authors, is they will start trying to make all those connections the moment their book is ready. You have done a
Mm.
great job of for years ahead of that, really going out there, meeting people, going to BoucherCon, talking to various people. I see mutual friend Scott McCrae's Targets West behind you, which I think is awesome. Like you've just done such a great job of that. Was that something that you set out to do, or is it just kind of your personality is networking? And as opportunities came up, you went, oh, why wouldn't I want to meet this person?
Yeah, it's a little mixture of all of that, to be honest. I'm not a natural extrovert, which seems crazy for a guy who's
Really?
done stand-up comedy, and I have no problems public speaking whatsoever. But my natural instinct is to sit back. Like
I'm tempted to
I'm a
joke
vice.
that the truth of this is that you're a really great writer, and clearly only really great writers are not natural extroverts. But that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
personal bias.
The 100%, like I don't mind. I like alone time. I like quiet, which seems insane for a guy with 4 kids and three big
Hmm.
dogs and a full house of just jam-packed sound and noise. But which is why I'm up early and I enjoy my peace and quiet to write. That's my time. And so I think as I'd written the first draft of this book, and I was again kind of trying to think. No, I hadn't done the writer's critique group yet. I was just
Hmm.
kind of trying to figure things out, and I heard about BoucherCon, and it was down in San Diego, which is a couple hours from my house,
Hmm.
and it was like the week up, so I wasn't
Oh,
thinking about
awesome.
advance attending or anything like that. And I saw that they had day passes.
Hmm.
So again, it's September. It's we got jobs and all kind of stuff. And it's like, hey, I asked my wife, like, hey, do you think on Saturday, it'd be all right if I go to attend this conference for the day, drive down in the morning? So yeah, I was wheels up at like 4:30 in the morning, drove down to San Diego, and I didn't talk to a soul. I just attended some of the sessions and listened to people. And the thing I learned, I one of the things I learned was a lot of these authors aren't any different than me. They're not anything.
Hmm.
Yeah, they may have an expertise. They might be former pilots or former cops, or maybe they were librarians and now they write. Like maybe
Hmm.
they have those kind of histories. But the one common denominator was they didn't stop writing. They
Yes.
just kept at it, and that's what they love doing. And that's I was like, you know what, I that's what I like doing. I love writing. It's such a freeing creative endeavor for me. It doesn't cost anything to write. I don't have
Hmm.
to go. I'm not out late at night trying to do stand up comedy at a VFW in you know some at Hemet. It's just I am I could be home. I just got to get up early and do it. Or if my kids are at a practice, I can sit on the sideline and write then. But now I'm coaching the daughter, so now no time to write because I'm throwing softball pitches at 8 year olds. And anyway, so 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 that was kind of on the drive home, full day at BoucherCon again. I didn't meet anybody. I just kind of went and took some pictures. Jack Carr ended up being there. I do enjoy Jack Carr books. I have a shelf of his stuff. But again,
Hmm.
I don't write that style. I enjoy some of his elements, like he talks about watches and
Hmm.
food and that stuff he kind of got from Fleming, and he mentions about that, which is great. And the stories are entertaining. Don't get me wrong, but I don't have the super in depth knowledge of firearms or anything like that. So and gear. So but I like his writing. I like
Hmm.
listening to him. He's so enthusiastic about the
Oh
craft
yeah.
and the profession. I did meet him there. He was doing a book signing, so I talked to him for a little bit, and he was great. He was so generous with his time. He
Hmm.
just like sat. I was the last person in line. He just sat there and we just talked for 15, 20 minutes, and he asked me a bunch of questions about what I was working on, what I do for a living. It was a very nice guy.
I think that
And
if anyone wants a masterclass in how to build a brand as an author today, you cannot look at someone better than Jack Carr. because he has done an
Yeah.
amazing job of building a tribe, building a platform, building this is what my books are, these are the things I like, and you like those things too. So, like, people, that is the person to watch for how to do this right.
Yeah. And then from there, that was the way home. I was like telling my wife, I was like, I didn't have a public profile. Instagram's private and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I think I need to create a public
Hmm.
profile just for my writing, just to kind of start building that network, trying to start meeting people. And so I did that with my Instagram, and it just kind of started poking around a little bit and meeting people online, or just kind of or meeting people over in Instagram, and then went to BoucherCon. The next year was in Tennessee, in Nashville,
Hmm.
and I met Luke Goodich there. That he
Hmm.
was there, and we kind of met online, talked online a little bit. Met in person there, had a great time, spending a few days with him and talking to him and seeing it was like his first time on a panel
Hmm.
and seeing him doing science. So I snagged a couple of pictures and sent them to him. Like, oh, here you go. Like these just cool moments to have, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think I understood the more you support other authors, they will
Hmm.
return the favor. And it's not
Yes.
that hard to share somebody's post and to,
Hmm.
recommend their stuff. And, even if you haven't read it, I'm sure it's going to be great. Like, why not have Diamonds in Denver
It's
and Unwanted Passenger right here
fantastic
over my
books
shoulder?
right there.
Yeah, so we're here. Why not show your stuff off? Because I'm on your
Thank
podcast,
you.
and I haven't read Diamonds in Denver yet, but I've read Unwanted Passenger. I've read Avid Romance Treasure. That's over here somewhere. But why not have a little self? I was on
You
Eric
have
Bishop's
great
podcast,
taste in
same thing.
literature.
But it's I'm not as well read as you. You read like 8 books a month. I get through maybe one, but we're getting there.
One book a month is still an endeavor. And like honestly, one of the questions I have for you is you do have a full life, you have a full family, you have a full job. How do you make writing work too? Because I got married within the last year, and the biggest struggle I've had is getting back into a routine and a rhythm for like writing and fitness because now I have this X factor in my life that I did not
Mhm.
before. And I'm still trying to figure out how to make it manage. The moment I hear people start talking about kids, it sends me into like a bit of the sweats because I'm like, I don't know how I can do anything in life if I had kids too.
Yeah, it's early mornings for me, 100%, and or I got to squeeze in time when I can and not just scroll on my phone. I got to put the phone away and be committed to it because that's what I want to do, and that's the stories I want to tell. So yeah, like I said, coffee pot starts brewing at 4:30. I'm sure I should be some coffee aficionado with a steamer and a brewer and a slow thing. I don't got time for that. So the coffee pot is on a timer and it starts brewing at 4:30 every morning. So by the time my alarm goes off at 5, that coffee is hot and ready, and I just drink a black and I pour my cup of coffee, a little couple scoops of creatine in there, get
Ooh,
another
nice.
tum get another tumbler with a lid that I put in there with some collagen, for some
Mm-hmm.
protein,
Mm-hmm.
and bring that upstairs. So that way I don't have to go back downstairs to get coffee. I just kind of drink my coffee, refill, and I'm at the screen. I talked about earlier, just getting whatever I can get in,
Mm-hmm.
and not beating myself up if I don't hit a certain word count. I don't hold
Mm-hmm.
myself to. I got to get 1,000 words in today. I got to get. I threw that out the window because of kids, because I know how busy the family life is and how it can turn on a dime when you
Mm-hmm.
think you have. Oh, I'll just write later in the day. That later in the day is never coming because
Mm-hmm.
somebody's going to get sick at school. Somebody's going to have a thing they need to go to. Something
Mm-hmm.
shall happen if you put it off until later in the day. So I commit myself to get up every morning, to get in the screen and get in whatever I can. And then if there's sometimes there's weekends and we'll have the rare downtime on a day, and I'll go
Mm-hmm.
sit at a coffee shop, go sit at a bar, have a drink, do some writing, and be kind of. I don't need because I have kids, I have a busy life. I don't need a sterile environment to write. I don't need to be at a library. I don't. I will. I can do those as well, but it,
Mm-hmm.
it could be busy and noisy around me, and I could focus in and write. So I've done plenty of writing on. So I used to do water polo. I would sit in the
Mm-hmm.
bleachers on the pool deck and crank away for an hour and a half, and those were great. I did a ton of writing there. I wrote the uh, tongue collector in Western Tales right
Yes.
there. I wrote that on the side of the pool deck in 3 days. So that was, when you get that time, you can't crank out things that are publishable. So that's nice, but
Mm-hmm.
it does take time. And I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be like a book a year or 2 books a year person. But with that said, I might be a 2 or 3 book a year person this year, depending
Hmm.
on how much I could finish here, because it's been 3 years of putting it all together, and now
Hmm.
we have a little bit of a backlog. So that's
Hmm.
definitely doesn't hurt. So because I didn't rush to market, I kind
Hmm.
of took my time. I wanted it to get good. I did shop it around to agents for a while, but again, it was nowhere near where it is now.
Hmm.
And even if I did shop this around, they took it inland around. I just didn't want to wait
Yeah,
2 3 years for it to be
that's the
published,
thing.
because that's the timeline really for
Hmm.
authors these days. Like I said, Dave Putnam, who I just mentioned, he got a book deal at the end of last year for something that's coming out, and it's not coming out the summer or fall 2027. So that's
Yeah.
just the nature of the traditional business. And so I took a lot of time thinking about it, like, oh, is that what I want to do? And talking to people, like, and listening to your podcast, listening to the Veritas guys, listening to Luke and Nathaniel, seeing what you all are doing, talking with Eric B. Bishop and what
Hmm.
he's done with his brand and
Oh
his
yeah, he's
books.
done amazing.
Yeah. So just, I figured there was another channel to do. And so I started my own imprint, 6 Point Press, at the end of last year,
Hmm.
just to kind of, I want to do this myself, and I want to put this out, and I'm going to put I think I have a good cover. I think the cover pops. I think that
Hmm.
was something that I really wanted to make sure that wasn't AI. It wasn't me on Canva messing around. I
Hmm.
tried to mess around on Canva, and every time I'm like, this just looks not great. So but again, Reedsy,
Yeah.
went through Reedsy to look at covered artists, and I'm like, I don't want to spend seven, eight hundred
Hmm.
dollars for cover art. I really didn't want to spend, you know, more than a few hundred, but I found Git covers,
Hmm.
and that's who I use. And it's junior designers out in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And it was 35 bucks, 40 if you wanted for Ingram Spark, so
Nice.
$40. And I sent them a bunch of samples of books I liked and covers I
Hmm.
liked and kind of the tone I wanted. I didn't want
Hmm.
the cabin in the woods. I didn't want the silhouette guy in the thriller genre. I wanted something with that breathes some isolation, some tension,
Hmm.
and kind of showed off how hot it is out here.
Hmm.
And I think, went back and forth a few times on the design, and kept kind of fine tuning things and tweaking things. But I think we landed in a good spot and a
Hmm.
eye catching
It's very
book cover.
eye-catching.
Thank you. I actually ordered a proof to send out to somebody the other day, and it came without the
Oh,
water
without
stamp
the
on it.
water stamp on it? That's
Yeah,
nice.
and I watermarked. I was like, "Hey, look at this!" And I was like, "Oh, I'll use it for the podcast, and then I will ship it out." So that'll come. And yeah, and I got so worried because my wife went through. This is the first proof that came, and my
Hmm.
wife went through it, and she was, just minor things. I'm like,
Yeah.
cool. So I just fixed all the
Hmm.
minor things, and then when you're in KDP, then you're looking at the full, all the thumbnails of
Yes.
all the pages, and I'm looking at this one page. I'm like, that's a short chapter. It's like a quarter of a page or half a page. I'm like, what is that chapter? So I go look as I zoom in on it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, where is this moment where Tyler Jr. goes to recruit his security, his muscle, so to speak.
Hmm.
I'm like, where's that scene? Is it before that? And I go all the way back to the beginning. I'm like, nope. Is it after that? I'm like, nope. I'm like, I wrote this scene. Like, I wrote this chapter. Where did I delete it? What happened to it? This goes like saving in multiple spots. I wrote that chapter in Scrivener, but didn't transfer it into
Oh.
Word, so it
Hmm.
wasn't that big of a. And it was the same chapter, number chapter. I think it
Yeah.
was chapter 20. And so I'm just like, okay, pull this chapter from Scrivener. Let's put it into the Word doc. Now I got to resave it to all the formats to get it into the right spots, right in the areas. And I was just like, oh my, because she asked me a question about
Hmm.
it at one point, like, oh, is this character? Because so at one
Hmm.
point Junior meets Eve. There's a story about him meeting this girl Eve in a bar in San Francisco
Hmm.
on Polk Street. In the original one, Eve had this huge story arc about
Okay.
being why she ended up being like an assassin, and why grew up in foster
Hmm.
care, and was kind of, so she had her own like story arc, which I may now table for another time and maybe do an own little spin off
Hmm.
or one off for her, maybe a novella or something. But yeah, so I ended up cutting her just about completely out, other than him kind of thinking back to this Polk Street moment and why he needs to have his own muscle. So, but anyway, it's like, oh, what about Eve? Is Eve in the story? I'm like, a little bit, but nothing much. And she just moved on. And then I saw that chapter. I'm like, oh no, no wonder she was confused, because here she is in this, half a page
Hmm.
chapter being kind of more thoroughly discussed for. what you could in the space. And I was like, oh no, no, that's gotta go. Oh my god, that would have been disastrous. But man, that was we caught it.
I think that's one of the things people, when you are doing self-pub, your own imprint, even indie, the amount of extra review and revision is one of the main things that needs to happen. I even read professional, like I was just reading an arc on NetGalley for a book that's coming out, traditional deal, Penguin Random House, and I caught a typo in the thing.
Hmm.
Now, I'm assuming they'll have caught it by the time the book actually comes out, but it's just a
Yeah.
reminder people go over these books so many times, and still, because of the sheer quantity of information, things can be missed.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, they took it inland. It is up on NetGalley now. I got it up a couple weeks ago.
Sweet.
Yeah, so and there's been 36, 37 requests, something like that for it so far. One
That's
being
awesome.
Teresa Brock, a friend of the show, friend of yours.
Yes.
So hopefully it gets some nice reviews and some. That I wasn't going to do because it is pricey to be on NetGalley. But Dave Putnam was like, it's probably the best bang for your buck as far as getting
Hmm.
some early eyes on
Yes.
your stuff. So I did go ahead and make that investment. And like I said, mainly just because I wasn't going to do it. And then Teresa reached out, like, hey, I want to see your book on NetGalley. I'm like, hold please.
Oh,
And
please.
it was had already submitted the application for it and everything like that, but I just hadn't I got the
Yeah.
approval and then like here's how much it costs. I was like, and then she was like, I don't see it on that guy. I'll give me 10. And then
Hmm.
it was I got that done. So yeah,
That's
that
awesome.
was so much to learn in this journey.
Hmm.
Yeah, for everything like we just said from format. I did all the
Hmm.
formatting myself as far as the interior
Congratulations.
stuff, and that was a very tedious job that I did at a
Hmm.
volleyball tournament in between games. Like I would sit there, my wife was working on her like stuff for her doctorate program. I'm sitting there working. She's like, look at us. One of us is working on a doctorate. One of us is working on a novel. Like, look at us coming to being all adults and doing achieving things in life.
That's awesome. James, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Yeah. So website jamesdawsonwrites.com is, probably the landing page, but there's not a ton on there. I do have a short story on there that involves a serial killer stand-up
Hmm.
comic, chasing down stand-up comics. So that's on there, a little two-parter. If you want some high as noir tension, takes place in New Orleans. Instagram, same thing. James Dawson Writes is probably where I'm most active. There is a TikTok out there, same handle that I'm not as active in, but
Hmm.
I try to get in there as well. And then, yeah, those are probably the main spots.
Hmm. And they took it inland. This is available on the 31st, available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any preferred retailers.
Yeah, that should cover it. You should be able to order from, you've got a local indie bookstore you like. You should be able to order through them as well if you want to go that route. So yeah, it should be available just about anywhere. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for this debut. Nerve wracking for sure. Thankfully, I have Glenfiddich 19 to help me
Yes.
with get through get through pub day, and I'm not just staring out there refreshing the dashboards.
Oh, I understand. James, again, fantastic book and delightful interview. I'm sure we'll have you on the show again.
Thank you for having me, Terrance. Look forward to it.